What if I told you? Episode 3 doesn't reveal the biggest secret in Silo. It reveals who has been controlling the truth from the very beginning. For 3 seasons, we've all been asking the same question. What's outside the silo? But after episode 3, I'm convinced we've been looking in the wrong direction. Because the biggest mystery isn't outside the walls. It's hidden inside them. Welcome back to Ghost Frame. If you enjoy deep breakdowns, hidden details, and fan theories about Silo, make sure to subscribe because every episode this season is rewriting what we thought we knew. And before we dive in, I want to ask you one question. What do you think is the biggest reveal in episode 3? Was it Lucas being alive? The algorithm's terrifying response? Or the Washington flashbacks that quietly explain how this entire system was built? Let me know your answer in the comments. Because I think one of these reveals is far more important than the others. Episode 3 opens with another visit to Washington. At first, it feels like the show is slowing everything down. Different characters. A different timeline. A completely different story. But that's exactly why these scenes matter. The writers aren't interrupting Juliet's journey. They're showing us where her story truly began. Every time the episode cuts back to Washington, it's showing us the birth of an idea. The belief that information should be controlled. That some truths are simply too dangerous for ordinary people to know. And decades later, that same belief still governs every corner of the silo. The episode then returns to Juliet. She's still searching for Lucas Kyle. But this time, the mystery isn't whether he's alive. It's why everyone wanted him to disappear in the first place. Everyone repeats the same sentence. He was sent to the mines. Notice what nobody says. Nobody says they saw him die. Nobody says they found his body. Just one carefully repeated story. And episode 3 quietly reminds us of something we've seen since season 1. Inside the silo, people rarely lie. They simply repeat what they've been taught. And sometimes, those are two very different things. Then the episode does something brilliant. Just as Juliet begins questioning the official story, we cut back to Washington once again. One timeline shows us people accepting the truth. The other shows us the people who created it. That's not a coincidence. It's the writers telling us that every mystery inside the silo started long before the first resident ever stepped underground. And once Juliet realizes that, her search for Lucas stops being a rescue mission and becomes an investigation into the origins of the silo itself. Juliet refuses to accept the official story. Not because she has evidence, but because the story itself doesn't make sense. Every person she questions gives her the exact same answer. He was sent to the mines. That's all. Not, he died. Not, I saw what happened. Just a sentence that's been repeated so many times that nobody thinks to question it anymore. And episode 3 keeps reminding us of one important idea. Inside the silo, people don't always know the truth. They simply inherit it. Determined to find something more concrete, Juliet begins speaking to people who actually worked in the mines. She isn't looking for sympathy. She's looking for inconsistency. She asks them what the mines are really like. The answers are almost identical. Dark. Dangerous. Endless. One former miner even dismisses Lucas entirely, saying that once you're sent down there, your story is over. But there's something strangely missing from every conversation. Nobody describes the mines in detail. Nobody talks about what lies beyond the work zones. Nobody even mentions how far the tunnels actually go. It's as if there's an invisible line. A place nobody is willing, or perhaps allowed, to talk about. And in Silo, silence is often more revealing than words. That's when the episode quietly cuts back to Washington. At first, it feels like an interruption. but it's actually giving us another piece of the same puzzle. We watch people making decisions that will shape the future. Conversations filled with uncertainty, fear, and impossible choices. No one knows exactly what's coming. But everyone agrees on one thing. The public cannot know everything. That idea should sound familiar. Because decades later, it's still the foundation of life inside the silo. Different people. Different time. Exactly the same philosophy. Control information. And you control society. Back in the present, Juliet begins looking at Lucas differently. Maybe Bernard didn't send him to the mines as punishment. Maybe he sent him there because Lucas had already seen something he wasn't supposed to see. Think about Bernard's behavior throughout the series. He's ruthless. But he's rarely impulsive. Every move is calculated. Every sacrifice has a purpose. So why risk losing someone intelligent enough to become his shadow? Unless the mines were never meant to be a prison. They were meant to become Lucas' grave. Or at least, that's what Bernard expected. But if Lucas found another way, if he discovered something beyond those tunnels, then Bernard's biggest mistake wasn't choosing Lucas as his shadow. It was underestimating his curiosity. And as episode 3 quietly suggests, curiosity has always been the most dangerous crime inside the silo. Because in this world, the moment you stop accepting the official story, you're already becoming a threat. If Juliet's story is about discovering the truth, the Washington storyline is about understanding why the truth had to be buried in the first place. That's why episode 3 keeps jumping between these two timelines. They're not competing with each other. They're completing each other. One timeline shows us the consequences. The other shows us the cause. And that's a storytelling technique Silo has been using all season. The writers don't explain the mystery first. They let us experience the result before revealing how it all began. Back in the present, one conversation quietly becomes one of the most important scenes in the entire episode. Camille Sims confronts Robert. At first, it sounds like a husband and wife arguing about family. About Anthony. About years they can never get back. But underneath the emotion, the conversation is really about memory. Camille says something that's easy to miss. She points out that Juliet remembers facts about her father, but not the feeling of loving him. That's an incredibly specific distinction. Remembering a person isn't the same as remembering the emotional connection you once had with them. And that's where episode 3 becomes fascinating. The episode never tells us that memories are being manipulated. Instead, it asks us to notice that several characters seem strangely disconnected from their own past. That's a clue, not proof. And Silo has always trusted its audience to connect those clues. Then another detail slips by almost unnoticed. Vitamin D+. The show never pauses to explain exactly what it is. Instead, it focuses on the characters' reactions. Robert doesn't look confused. He looks worried. Camille doesn't describe it like ordinary medication. She treats it as something necessary, even if the cost is deeply personal. That doesn't confirm the fan theory that vitamin D+ affects memory. But episode 3 definitely gives us another reason to question it. And here's a hidden detail that many viewers missed. Throughout the Washington scenes, the people making the biggest decisions almost never talk about controlling people. They talk about protecting people. That choice of words matters. It's the exact same language Bernard uses in the present timeline. He almost never describes himself as a ruler. He describes himself as a protector. Whether that's genuine, or simply the justification every generation tells itself, is something episode 3 deliberately leaves unanswered. By the end of this section, one idea keeps appearing in both timelines. The most powerful people aren't trying to control what citizens do. They're trying to control what citizens know. And in Silo, those two things may actually be the same. By now, Episode 3 has quietly planted three important ideas in our minds. Lucas disappeared into the mines. The Washington flashbacks reveal how information was controlled from the very beginning. And several conversations hint that memory may not be as reliable as we once believed. Then the episode brings all three ideas together. Camille decides it's time to stop guessing. Instead of relying on Bernard, she turns to the one thing that's supposed to think without fear or emotion: the algorithm. And this may be the single most important conversation in Episode 3. Camille lays out the facts. Lucas worked in IT. Bernard personally chose him as his shadow. Then he was sent to the mines. On their own. Those facts don't seem unusual. But together, they raise a completely different question. What if Lucas never stopped digging? Not deeper. Sideways. Toward another silo. The algorithm immediately responds. Severe precautions should be taken immediately. Notice what it doesn't say. It never says the idea is impossible. It never dismisses Camille's theory. It never asks for more evidence. Instead, it instantly recommends emergency action. That's a huge hidden detail. The algorithm isn't reacting to certainty. It's reacting to probability. Which means that, based on everything it knows, the possibility of one silo reaching another is serious enough to trigger an immediate response. Now think back to one of the oldest rules in the pact. Horizontal digging has always been forbidden. For years, most viewers assumed that rule existed to protect the structure of the silo. But Episode 3 quietly invites us to look at that rule differently. What if the tunnels were never the real danger? What if communication was? Because the moment two silos make contact, every official story begins to fall apart. Another hidden detail appears here. Camille never asks whether another silo exists. She speaks as if its existence is already accepted. Her question is whether Lucas could reach one. That subtle difference suggests that people at the highest level already know far more than ordinary citizens ever will. And here's another detail that deserves attention. The algorithm doesn't warn Bernard. It answers Camille. That might seem insignificant. But it tells us that she has access to information and authority far beyond what we've seen in previous episodes. The Washington timeline suddenly makes even more sense. Back then, the people building this system believed knowledge had to be controlled to preserve civilization. Generations later, the algorithm reaches exactly the same conclusion. Different century. Different decision maker. The same philosophy. Protect the secret. Control the information. Preserve the system. And maybe that's the biggest hidden detail in Episode 3. The people in charge may have changed, but the system itself never did. By the time Episode 3 ends, the writers still haven't answered the biggest questions. They've only shown us where to look next. And if there's one thing Silo has always done brilliantly, it's hiding its biggest revelations in plain sight. Let's go over three hidden details that are incredibly easy to miss. Hidden detail number 1. The Washington timeline never tells us that controlling people is the goal. Instead, the conversations keep returning to the idea of protecting humanity. That choice of words matters. Because Bernard uses almost the exact same language in the present. He rarely says he's protecting his own power. He always says he's protecting the silo. Whether that's the truth, or simply the story every generation tells itself, Episode 3 deliberately refuses to answer. And that's what makes Bernard such an interesting character. He may not see himself as the villain at all. Hidden detail number 2. Listen carefully to how characters talk about Lucas. Almost nobody says they saw him. almost nobody says he's dead. Everyone simply repeats the official version of events. Silo has done this before. Whenever every character repeats the exact same explanation, the show is usually inviting us to question that explanation instead of accepting it. It's a subtle writing technique, but one the series has relied on since the beginning. Hidden detail number 3. The Washington scenes aren't just explaining the past. They're quietly predicting the future. Almost every major decision we watch in those flashbacks has a direct reflection inside the present-day silo. The people have changed. The technology has changed. But the philosophy hasn't. That's why those scenes are much more than world-building. They're a blueprint for understanding every decision Bernard makes today. Now let's talk about 2 theories that fans have been discussing after episode 3. The first theory is that the ban on horizontal digging was never about protecting the structure of the silo. It was about preventing contact between different silos. Episode 3 doesn't confirm that. But the algorithm's reaction certainly makes the possibility feel much more believable. The second theory focuses on the Washington timeline. Some fans believe we're not simply watching the construction of the silo project. They think we're witnessing the moment its original purpose began to change. What may have started as humanity's survival plan could have slowly evolved into a system built around permanent control. It's still only a theory. But episode 3 adds several small clues that keep this idea alive. And now, here's the ghost frame theory. I don't think the most dangerous secret in Silo is the existence of another silo. I think it's the fact that the people running this world may no longer be making the most important decisions. Think about what we've seen. Bernard constantly depends on the algorithm. Camille trusts its judgment. Critical decisions are increasingly handed over to it. So here's my question. What if the algorithm isn't just protecting humanity anymore? What if it's protecting the system itself? Those are 2 very different goals. A system doesn't care about individuals. It only cares about surviving. And if sacrificing truth, or even sacrificing innocent people, increases the chances of survival, then from the algorithm's perspective, that's simply the logical decision. If that's true, then Bernard may not be the person with the most power. He may simply be the latest caretaker following instructions from something created generations ago. And honestly, that possibility is far more terrifying than discovering another silo. So now it's your turn. Which theory do you believe? Is Lucas about to uncover the truth behind the other silos? Did the Washington timeline reveal the real origin of the pact? Or do you think the algorithm has already become the true power behind everything we've seen? Leave your theory in the comments. I read every single one, and some of the best ideas for future breakdowns come from your discussions. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to Ghostframe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss episode 4's breakdown. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you in the next